The endless war. The war had burned across the stars for 2 centuries. What began as a border dispute between the Drelk Syndicate and the Vael Dominion had escalated into a galaxy-spanning inferno. Dozens of civilizations were pulled in, systems razed, billions dead. Over time, the original cause of conflict faded into irrelevance. All that remained was destruction. The Vael Dominion, cold, hierarchical, and ruthless, pursued conquest with mathematical precision. Their fleets operated like synchronized storms, their soldiers bred for obedience. They believed in domination as a universal truth. Resistance was not a political act, it was heresy. Against them stood the alliance of sentient species, a desperate coalition of free races clinging to survival. The alliance was fractious, its members culturally and biologically diverse, its unity held together only by shared fear of the Dominion. Some were warriors. Most were not. But none could stand alone. The war had reached a stalemate. Neither side could push further. Worlds were lost and won with no progress. Technologies advanced, weapons evolved, and still, the dead piled higher. The alliance was exhausted. Their fleets were in retreat, their morale broken. Rumors of internal collapse spread like radiation. In a quiet council chamber aboard the Alliance flagship Serenity's Flame, a decision was made, one born not of strategy, but of desperation. They would contact Earth. Earth. Terra. Sol. 3. A name half-remembered in galactic memory, buried in old star maps and half-believed myths. The humans had been invited into the Galactic Compact over 400 years ago. They had declined, politely, but firmly. No one had heard from them since. At first, their absence had been an oddity. Then, a curiosity. Over time, it became a superstition. Tales spread of a savage species that had burned through its own history in wars of extinction. Of a planet where apex predators had built machines that learned, killed, and evolved. Of a species that, in its infancy, had split atoms and bent light. The Vael had dismissed them as primitives. The Alliance had quietly hoped they would never join the Dominion. No one truly believed humans still existed, until the Alliance's deep space probes picked up strange energy signatures from Sol Sector. Patterns the Alliance couldn't decode. Rhythms that hinted at advanced AI, gravitational manipulation, and something else, silence. Total, calculated silence. Desperate, the Council authorized a diplomatic mission. A small envoy of diplomats, warriors, and translators, each sworn to secrecy, was dispatched to Earth under stealth. If humanity could help, the war might yet be turned. If not, it would be the Alliance's final gambit. The journey was uneventful. The envoy's ship passed ancient defense satellites drifting inert near the Kuiper Belt. Further in, they encountered automated warning buoys, each broadcasting in crisp galactic standard, "Do not approach. This sector is neutral by force." And yet, the humans let them land. The envoys expected a primitive species, still confined to its cradle. What they found instead shook them. Earth was pristine. No orbital debris, no industrial haze. Megacities stretched beneath transparent domes, powered by suns in miniature. Skies shimmered with a ripple of quantum fields. Every human they met was calm, courteous, and eerily composed. But most unnerving was how little Earth seemed to care. The diplomats laid out the state of the war. They described the atrocities of the Dominion, the suffering of the Alliance, and the slow death of freedom across the stars. The humans listened. Silently. Patiently. When the presentation ended, the eldest among them, General Saito, a slim man with steel-gray eyes and an unblinking gaze, spoke just 4 words. "We're coming. Prepare yourselves." The envoy returned to the fleet, shaken and confused. 3 days later, Earth sent its first military vessels through the nearest worm gate. Sleek ships made of exotic alloys. No visible weapons. No insignias. No call signs. Only a message, broadcast in every known language of the Alliance. "Stand aside. We'll end it." On board the Serenity's Flame, Admiral Duran of the Felyari Confederation reviewed the sensor data. One of her officers scoffed. "Just a handful of ships? That's not an army." Duran didn't answer. She was still staring at the playback. In the distance, across hundreds of light-years, the Dominion was about to meet a force it had never imagined. The humans had finally joined the war. And somewhere in her bones, she knew. Everything was about to change. First contact, last chance. 3 human ships emerged from the Worm Gate over Lysara Prime, an Alliance stronghold barely holding back Dominion pressure. The Worm Gate had been monitored for weeks, with Dominion strike craft hovering just out of sensor range, waiting to intercept whatever came through. They didn't intercept anything. The human vessels exited in perfect formation, moving in eerie silence. Long and sleek, they resembled nothing the Alliance had ever seen. No visible weapons. No markings. No escort. They didn't need one. Seconds after arrival, the largest ship, the Indomitable, broadcast a single packet to all Alliance and Dominion channels in the system. This system is under temporary Terran jurisdiction. Withdraw immediately. You have 1 minute. No grand declaration. No bluster. Just an ultimatum. The Dominion didn't respond with words. 3 of their cruisers broke formation and fired. Red plasma lanced through the void, crossing the gap in seconds. And vanished. The beams hit something invisible, and dissolved like mist. No return fire came. No evasive maneuvers. The human ships just kept drifting forward. The Dominion opened up in full force, a dozen ships launching a barrage of torpedoes, energy beams, and gravitic disruptors. The humans still didn't move. This time, the counter came. Instantly. Dozens of tiny flashes lit space, microbursts of light with no apparent origin. One by one, Dominion ships winked out of existence. No explosions. No debris. Just gone. The remaining Dominion vessels fled in uncoordinated panic, abandoning their position. The Worm Gate fell silent. From the surface of Lysara Prime, Admiral Duran stood on the Alliance observation deck, jaw clenched. She'd seen countless battles. Lost half her fleet over the moons of Sorik. Watched comrades vaporized in Dominion death lances. But never had she seen anyone win a battle without firing a single shot. Within an hour, the human ships entered orbit. Duran was summoned aboard the Indomitable for a formal briefing. The interior of the ship defied explanation. The air tasted sterile, the gravity perfectly calibrated to her species. Polymorphic walls adjusted to her body temperature. Every surface was matte black, except for veins of shifting blue light that pulsed gently beneath the floor. 2 humans met her in the command chamber. The first, a tall, broad-shouldered woman with ice-pale skin and eyes like storm clouds, introduced herself as Commander Vera Singh. The second was older, lean, and unreadable, General Saito, the same man from Earth. Duran bowed politely. You came quickly. General Saito nodded. Because we don't do drawn-out wars. She hesitated. You reviewed the conflict. In 23 minutes, Singh replied. Your data feeds were a mess, but we've seen worse. Saito gestured to a glowing 3D projection of the galaxy. Dominion strongholds, logistics lines, fleet paths, all marked with surgical precision. We have a plan, he said. Operation Black Clock. Duran stared. What is that? The end, he said simply. We take out the Dominion's core structure, command, logistics, war production. Simultaneously. No second waves. No prolonged engagements. No treaties. You intend to win a 200-year war in one blow. Saito turned to her, eyes hard. No, Admiral. In 5 hours. Back on the Serenity's flame, Duran convened an emergency war council. The reactions were mixed. The humans are reckless, growled High Strategist Vector of the Kryn. They don't understand the Dominion. Or maybe we've spent too long believing the Dominion is unbeatable, murmured Admiral Riala of the Centauri. They barely brought any ships, one officer protested. They don't need more, Duran said quietly. What makes you so sure? Duran pulled up sensor logs. Because every Dominion ship that attacked them disappeared. Not exploded, erased. Their weapons bent around invisible barriers. Our best scanners couldn't even fully image the human vessels. She looked around the room. We asked for help. It came. Now we stand back and let them do what we never could. On board the Indomitable, General Saito prepared his strike teams. Humanity's military doctrine had evolved far beyond massed formations and territory control. Their wars were not won by occupation, but by removal. Identify the threat. Excise it entirely. Earth had watched the galaxy burn for centuries. Not because they didn't care, but because they had learned, long ago, that entering a war halfway was worse than not entering at all. This time, they would not fight to save anyone. They would fight to end the war. The countdown began. Operation Black Clock would begin in 11 standard hours. By the end of it, if Earth's plan held true, the Dominion would no longer exist. The 5-hour war. The countdown hit 0. Hour 1. Shock and silence. The human fleet, still no larger than 24 vessels, dispersed across Dominion space through jump gates the Alliance didn't even know existed. Each human ship vanished in a flicker of light, as though stepping behind a curtain. Within 8 minutes, the Dominion Central Command ship, the Crown of Vael, ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Not captured. Simply gone. Its quantum signature collapsed, leaving no wreckage, no escape pods, no survivors. From the capital world of Vael Tor, messages of confusion flooded out. Signal lost. Admiral unresponsive. Command chain broken. But the humans didn't pause. They had not come to destabilize the Dominion. They had come to erase it. Hour 2. Minds break first. All across the Vael Dominion, strange messages began appearing. Not on open channels, but on internal systems, command consoles, officer implants, encrypted feeds. The messages varied by audience. To soldiers, your leaders have fled. Lay down arms. You are not the enemy. To citizens, you have 3 hours to evacuate critical centers. No retaliation will come. The messages were not broadcasted. They were surgically delivered, in Vael dialects so precise they mirrored familial speech patterns. Fear spread faster than any weapon. Units stopped responding. Garrison leaders refused to issue orders. Civilians flooded transport hubs in silent panic. On the Dominion propaganda networks, a loop began to play. Footage of their own High Marshal, trembling and weeping as he was escorted by human soldiers into a black ship. The loop had been recorded 34 minutes earlier. Hour 3. Lights out. Human cyber warfare AIs activated what they called Dustfall Protocol. Within 10 minutes, the Dominion's interstellar communications went dark. Their data clouds evaporated. Weapon systems went offline, friend or foe identification collapsed, targeting arrays misfired. Even emergency beacons began broadcasting false coordinates. Entire fleets fired on their own escorts. On Vael Tor, their once impenetrable defense grid turned inward and detonated, vaporizing 3 orbital stations and half the planetary ring. All of it was coordinated from a single ship, the Indomitable, drifting silently 3 systems away, shielded from space-time detection. Every action was precise. Every blow was calculated. Hour 4. Collapse. The Dominion had ruled through fear and hierarchy. When the chain of command fractured, so did the Empire. Rebel cells, suppressed for decades, ignited across 23 systems. The humans armed them in real time, delivering weapons through microjumps that defied known physics. Human advisors embedded themselves within rebel warbands, not to lead, but to guide. Each victory they enabled was surgical. No civilian casualties, no power vacuums. In the Vael Military High Chamber, what was left of the War Council gathered. For generals, 2 of whom were AI proxies, argued over how to regain control. Then the chamber's walls turned transparent. Standing outside, watching them calmly, was General Saito. The council never made it to their panic buttons. The walls folded inward, the air turned white, and that was the end of the Vael Dominion's leadership. Hour 5. The quiet. Across the galaxy, the fighting stopped. Not due to surrender. Not due to exhaustion. There was simply no one left to give orders. Dominion ships powered down. Supply chains halted. War factories self-terminated, triggered by buried subroutines the humans had planted years ago. Seeds left in dormant probes, waiting for activation. The last broadcast from a Vael-controlled sector was a shaky, confused report from a lone outpost. We don't know what happened. We've received no instructions. Human ships they're just floating above us. Watching. They're not firing. But we've shut down everything. We're done. At the fifth hour's close, the Alliance War Council received a message from Earth, brief and emotionless. Operation complete. Status: Dominion neutralized. No occupation required. War concluded. Admiral Duran stood before the Serenity's Flames viewing window, staring at the stars that, for the first time in her lifetime, were no longer aflame with conflict. Behind her, an officer whispered, "They did it. In 5 hours." Duran nodded. But her voice was quiet. "They didn't just end the war," she said. "They ended the illusion that we were the dominant force in the galaxy." In the void above Lysara Prime, the Indomitable hovered for one final hour, silent and unmoving. Then, with no farewell, the human fleet turned and vanished. No jump signatures, no Wormgate activity. Just gone, as if they had never been there at all. But they had. And the galaxy would never forget. And then, the galaxy listened. The war was over. The Alliance, stunned into silence, did not celebrate at first. There were no victory parades, no banners unfurled across liberated worlds. Even as Vael ships lay cold and lifeless, even as occupied planets cheered the lifting of tyranny, a strange unease settled across the stars. Because no one had truly won the war. It had simply ended. The Dominion's 2-century reign of terror had been shattered not by diplomacy, attrition, or even rebellion. It had been deleted, methodically, invisibly, and without mercy, by a force that had waited in the wings for centuries. Humanity. On Lysara Prime, Admiral Duran convened a full summit of Alliance leaders. They arrived one by one, some in mourning robes, some in armor, some still glancing over their shoulders as if expecting another wave of Dominion ships. In a secure chamber beneath the Capitol dome, she faced them with a single message. "They're gone," she said. "The humans. They vanished without leaving a demand, a monument, or even a representative." Vector of the Kryn snorted. "No tribute. No claim of territory." "None," Duran replied. "They left behind only this." She activated a crystalline data sphere. A hologram shimmered to life, a simple message, recorded in a dozen languages. The voice was calm, unmistakably human. "You asked for help. We answered. We do not seek dominion. We do not wish for alliances. We do not demand gratitude. We do not linger. But we are always listening. Should another war of conquest arise, you will not need to ask again." The room fell silent. There were no cheers, no applause, just the weight of that final line. You will not need to ask again. Across the galaxy, the aftermath was swift. Dominion worlds, now leaderless and fractured, faced a choice: collapse into chaos, or rebuild. But the humans had thought of that too. Before their departure, they seeded entire systems with auto factories, food generators, and medical satellites. No branding. No announcements. Just quiet acts of stabilizing mercy. On a barren moon once used for Dominion weapon testing, a local broadcast tower activated unexpectedly. Its screen showed nothing but the Terran symbol, an abstract star wrapped in a helix, and a short message. "Life deserves peace. You've had war long enough." Even former Dominion soldiers, trained to fear nothing and obey everything, began to change. Stripped of orders, they began integrating into free worlds. Not out of fear, but out of a quiet realization they had been spared. The humans hadn't come to punish them. They'd come to stop the killing. It was a lesson the galaxy would not forget. In the political halls of the Alliance, debates raged. Some leaders demanded immediate contact with Earth, to form an alliance, a treaty, or at least ensure humanity's favor. But no channels reached them. Every probe sent toward Sol simply vanished. Every emissary returned empty-handed, if they returned at all. Others warned against seeking further contact. The humans had shown power beyond comprehension, and restraint far beyond what any of them could fathom. Pushing for more could invite consequences. Duran said nothing. In her private chambers, she reviewed the logs, frame by frame, of the humans' actions. The way they avoided civilian casualties. The way they left infrastructure intact. The way they chose not to rule, even when they could. This was not a race seeking conquest. This was a species that had learned something the rest of the galaxy hadn't yet. How to end a war without becoming the war. Centuries passed. The galaxy healed. Trade routes reopened. Freed worlds rebuilt. A new interstellar charter was drafted, one that forbade war as a political instrument. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And always, in the background, was the knowledge of Earth. Some doubted they even existed. Others believed they were watching still. Every once in a while, across some distant star system, a Dominion remnant would rise, or a warlord would test their strength. They never lasted long. Ships would vanish. Wars would die in their cradles. And then a message would appear, somewhere, in some language. Not again. On Earth, beneath the quiet skies of a re-wielded planet, a small council watched from orbit. General Saito, older now, but no less focused, stood beside a garden of cherry blossoms. A holographic star map pulsed before him, showing thousands of peaceful systems. No conflict zones. No Dominion. Commander Singh joined him silently. "It held," she said. "The peace." Saito nodded. "For now. And if it breaks again?" He turned to her, his voice calm. "Then we remind them." The war was over. But the lesson remained. Humanity didn't win through fear. They won through finality. And the galaxy would never forget it.